Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that I think every single one of us can relate to. Why is it so hard to start something? Whether it's starting a new project, learning a skill, or even something as simple as beginning your day's tasks, we often find ourselves stuck before we even begin. Sound familiar?
Oh, absolutely, Emily. I think it's something we all go through, and honestly, it can feel frustrating. You know what you want to do or what you should do, but when it comes time to take that first step, suddenly it feels impossible. It's like there's a huge mental barrier in the way. But why do you think that is?
I think there are a lot of reasons, but the biggest one for me is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear that we won't be good enough. When we think about starting something new, all of those negative thoughts come flooding in. What if I fail? What if I'm not as good as I hope to be? Those thoughts can be so overwhelming that it feels easier to just not start at all.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in that mindset where you're paralyzed by the fear of not doing something perfectly right away. But here's the thing, nobody is perfect from the start. Every expert was once a beginner. It's the act of starting that allows us to improve.
Yes. And I think people often forget that progress doesn't come from planning or thinking about starting. It comes from action. You don't get better by waiting around for the perfect moment. You get better by doing. But the tricky part is taking that first step, even when you don't feel ready.
And speaking of readiness, I think a lot of us wait for the perfect time to start something. But honestly, when is there ever a perfect time? Life is always going to be busy. There's always going to be something else happening. If you wait for everything to be perfect, you'll end up waiting forever.
Absolutely. The perfect time is never going to come. The conditions will never be just right. So the best time to start is always now. Even if things aren't ideal, you can always adapt as you go. The important thing is to just get started, even if it's a small step.
Exactly. And small steps are key. People tend to think they have to dive headfirst into something, but that's intimidating. The truth is, you don't need to start with everything figured out. Break it down into manageable tasks. Instead of thinking, I need to write a book, start with, I'll write a paragraph today. Those small victories build momentum.
Right. Momentum is huge. Once you take that first step, you'll find it easier to take the next one. It's like pushing a boulder. The hardest part is getting it to move. But once it starts rolling, it gets easier to keep it going. The same thing applies to almost everything we do in life.
Totally. And I think it's important to remember that motivation isn't always going to be there when you need it. A lot of people think they need to feel inspired or motivated to start something, but in reality, motivation often comes after you've already started. Once you see progress, that motivates you to keep going.
Yes, that's such a good point. People often wait for motivation to strike, but sometimes you have to create your own motivation by taking action. And honestly, once you see that first bit of progress, it's like a little spark that keeps you moving forward.
And let's talk about overthinking. I know I'm guilty of this sometimes. I'll spend so much time thinking about all the possible outcomes, all the what ifs, that I end up talking myself out of starting altogether. Overthinking can be such a huge barrier.
Oh, definitely. Overthinking can make even the simplest task feel monumental. You start imagining every possible way things could go wrong, And suddenly, the task that seemed manageable feels like this giant, impossible mountain to climb. But the truth is, most of the things we worry about never even happen.
Exactly. And the more you overthink, the bigger that task becomes in your mind. It's like the longer you wait, the harder it feels to actually start. But once you do start, you realize, hey, this wasn't as bad as I thought.
That's why it's so important to just take action, even if it's a small step. Don't worry about the end goal or the whole process. Just focus on what you can do right now. It might be something as simple as writing down your first idea or doing 5 minutes of work. But that action, no matter how small, breaks the cycle of overthinking.
Yes. And I think people underestimate how powerful those small actions can be. Like you said, writing down that first idea or even organizing your thoughts can set the stage for bigger actions. It's about building that momentum, and before you know it, you've made more progress than you expected.
And let's not forget about accountability. Sometimes having someone to support you can make a huge difference in getting started. Whether it's a friend, a family member, or even a community, sharing your goals with others can motivate you to follow through. It's like having someone there to cheer you on. And that support system can also help you stay grounded. Sometimes we need someone to remind us that it's okay to start small, that we don't need to be perfect right away.
That's so true. When you tell someone else what you're working on, you create a sense of responsibility. Now you don't want to let them down, and that can be a huge motivator to keep going. Plus, they can offer encouragement and advice when you're feeling stuck.
And that progress is more important than perfection. Having those reminders can make starting so much easier.
Absolutely. And don't forget about celebrating small wins. Every step you take is progress, and it's important to recognize that. When you celebrate your progress, even if it's just finishing one small task, it gives you the motivation to keep going.
Yes, I love that. Celebrating the small wins is such a great way to stay motivated. It reminds you that you're moving forward, even if it feels like a slow process. It's not about getting everything done at once. It's about making consistent progress over time. Okay, I think we've covered some really great points today. Let's take a moment to recap. So, the reason starting something new feels so hard often comes down to fear of failure, overthinking, and waiting for the perfect moment. But, as we've discussed, there is no perfect moment. You just have to dive in, take that first step, and build momentum as you go.
Exactly. And don't be afraid of taking small steps. Sometimes we feel like we have to do everything all at once, but that's not realistic. Breaking things down into manageable tasks makes the process less intimidating and more achievable.
And remember, action creates motivation. You don't need to wait for that perfect burst of inspiration. Start with something small, and as you see progress, you'll naturally feel more motivated to keep going. It's all about building momentum.
Right. And also, having a support system can be a game changer. Whether it's a friend, a family member, or a community, having someone to keep you accountable and cheer you on can make the process a lot easier. Yes, starting is always the hardest part, but once you've begun, everything becomes more manageable. We'd love to hear from you. What's something you've been wanting to start but haven't yet? Let us know in the comments below. We're here to support you, And maybe your story will inspire someone else to take that first step too.
Exactly. And like we said earlier, don't forget to celebrate those small wins. Every step you take is progress, and it's important to recognize that. When you celebrate your progress, even if it's just finishing one small task, it gives you the motivation to keep going.
So, if you've been putting off starting something, whether it's a new project, a habit you want to build, or something you've been meaning to do, take this as your sign to start today. Even if it's just a tiny step, that's still a step forward. And once you get going, you'll see that the hardest part really is just starting.
Yes, starting is always the hardest part, but once you've begun, everything becomes more manageable. We'd love to hear from you. What's something you've been wanting to start but haven't yet? Let us know in the comments below. We're here to support you, and maybe your story will inspire someone else to take that first step too.
We love hearing your stories, and we hope this conversation has encouraged you to take action. Starting might be difficult, but it's also the most rewarding part of the journey. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, everyone. Remember, it's okay to start small, and it's okay not to be perfect. The most important thing is to take that first step. We'll see you next time, and until then, keep moving forward.
You've got this. Take that first step today, and we'll be here cheering you on. See you in the next episode.
Momentum, meaning the force that keeps something moving or developing after it has started. Example: once you start working on your goals, you build momentum, making it easier to continue. Overthinking, meaning the act of thinking about something too much, often leading to stress or inaction. Example: overthinking can prevent you from taking the first step towards starting a new project. Accountability, meaning the responsibility to someone or for some activity, often involving keeping track of progress. Example: sharing your goals with a friend can provide accountability and help you stay on track. Inspiración, meaning the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially something creative. Example: watching someone else succeed can give you the inspiration to start your own project. Perfection, meaning the state of being free from flaws or defects. Example: don't wait for perfection before starting something. Just get going and improve along the way. Procrastination, meaning the act of delaying or postponing something that needs to be done. Example: procrastination can be a major obstacle when trying to start a new task or project. Resilience, meaning the ability to recover quickly from difficulties or setbacks. Example: building resilience is important for overcoming challenges when you're just starting out. Clarity, meaning the quality of being clear, easy to understand, or free from confusion. Example: having clarity about your goals helps you make decisions and stay focused on what matters.